What is enterprise architecture? Could you describe it?
Trying to demystify the complexity, in our role. Like we have different stakeholders, of course, from the leadership of Bol to the engineering teams.
But why are we using technology X?
Yeah.
This is really bad. I've seen it gone wrong.
Who came up with this
like
idea?
we all have these examples, right?
Yeah.
And we also, for example, use AI to translate them into podcasts, for example.
Competition.
Yeah.
So, today we have a great topic, enterprise architecture. And for that, we have two enterprise architects.
Surprise.
Surprise, yeah.
What a funny coincidence, yeah.
Yeah.
So really cool and really, really awesome topic, to be honest. So I'm really happy that you guys joined us here today.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Really happy
Thank
to
you.
be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, let's start by with introducing yourself. So who wants to start?
Yeah, shall I start? So I'm Eleanor. I work at Bol for quite a long time. We started our team actually last year in December. That's when the enterprise architecture function was introduced at Bol. So I don't have that much experience yet in this role, but I've been an architect at Bol for 10 years. Is there also, what do you want to know?
Whatever
more?
you want to share.
I like cats.
That's a good fact. I like it. Where do you live?
I live in Utrecht,
Nice.
so I can always go to the office on the bike. So it's really nice. Of course, we all knew about the crow attacks. I was actually attacked by a crow.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh,
Now I have a longer route to the office because I tend to avoid them.
What helps is a helmet with eyes on the back. That's what. Really.
That I didn't do. I actually just walked or I took a longer route.
Okay, yeah, that's also healthy, right?
Yes.
It works.
That works. And Alexandra.
Yeah, I'm Alexandra. I'm originally from Romania. My background has always been in computer science. Joined Bol almost 9 years ago as a software engineer, was mostly doing the search engine optimization, then search engine advertising, then moved on to more tech leadership position. And now I just started with Eleanor working in this awesome team of 5 enterprise architects. So a small team, but also a fun team to be in. At home, I also live quite close by to the office. What keeps me really busy is my almost 4 years old daughter. So hobbies are surrounding her and, all the Lego, all the drawing and the arts that you can do at home. And very happy to be here. Finally, we are having this podcast.
Yeah,
Fully agree.
indeed. Since the start of this function, actually, we wanted to have this one.
Yeah.
So as you guys are relatively new in this, and it's a new function at Bol, what is enterprise architecture? Could you describe it?
Yeah, so I think the way that we do it at Bol is probably quite different from how if you would look at it on the Dutch market. So traditionally, actually, I trained to be an enterprise architect, and I did it in my previous job at a different company. And then it was much more about also connecting to business strategy and setting also the organizational structure for the enterprise. But I think I would describe it at Bol like it's architecture on enterprise scale, which we didn't have until actually last year. So we noticed that at Bol, we found it a bit harder to get our bigger decision made. So the bigger decisions that were having enterprise-wide impact, they usually lingered for a long time. It was hard to know who was actually accountable for making these decisions, especially if they were more technical, where the leadership was like, okay, so this might be too much detail for us. But who needs to have a say in it? So that's why, last year we started with this function really to look at governance to make sure that the bigger decisions can actually be made in a timely manner, but also to have more guardrails because we are coming from a culture of a lot of team autonomy. So this is also, I still really believe in that. And that's also the reason actually why I joined Bol, because I really think it is important to give engineers as much autonomy as possible. But we never really thought about, but what if there's too much autonomy? What if there's no rules? Then actually it becomes harder to make the right decision, even if you're really talented, because there's always so many options to solve a problem. But what is then the decision that would actually help us as a company? So in our job, it's more we are more responsible to setting these guardrails to make sure that engineers know what is right. You want to add anything to that?
No, really good answer. Yeah, for me, it's also about trying to demystify the complexity, in our role. Like we have different stakeholders, of course, from the leadership of Bolt to the engineering teams, and we try to make that connection work and translate as much as possible from our company strategy to actually what gets implemented in the code.
Yeah.
So it is, I think, a very interesting topic and a really interesting moment for Bol to actually move from this autonomy, from this independence that the teams have, to actually also consider the bigger picture and, like Eleanor said, what's best for the company, and to enable them to actually implement harder things in an easier way. I think that's also one of our goals, to remove the discussion, the noise, the uncertainties.
Yeah. So how do you reach the team? How do you do that? Because I think it sounds great, the intention of enterprise architecture. I think it can bring a lot, especially in the situation where we came from. So how do you do it? What are the methods?
So we are actually, like Alexandra already said, a really small team. So we're only with 5 people. So we are not constantly able to actually talk to everyone. So we really want to set these guardrails and make sure that they are there where the teams see them. So teams, they use, for example, our internal developer platform called Docs for all their documentation. And there they can also find our decision records. Perhaps we can talk about it a little bit later. So one of the things that we use is decision records. So all our decisions, they are made and they are stored in our architecture decision record repo. And then engineers can always find all the decisions that are made. Obviously, we want to communicate to teams in all the channels that they use. It's something that we're still also discovering, like what's the best way of reaching everyone and making ourselves also approachable at the same time. Like we don't want to, like there's always this talk about the ivory tower when you talk about the enterprise architecture. We don't want to be like that. So we really want to have an open discussion with engineers as much as possible, not only with engineers, but also with leadership. But we mostly create artifacts that are easy to find and that are easy to understand. They're well written, hopefully. That's what we aim, at least. And we also, for example, use AI to make these artifacts and translate them into podcasts, for example. So,
nice. Competition.
Maybe we can get some more free time.
Oh yeah, that
also works.
That also works. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, I think also because of course, the size of our team and the variety of topics that is landing in our team, we really rely on everyone out there. We cannot be looking into all the details, especially in the implementation. We can set a direction, but I think what we want to achieve is that we move from this architecture as a role to architecture as a skill set. So a lot of our efforts are put into creating this framework, this context for engineers to be able to implement features and look back also on the previous decisions in the most efficient way.
And that's really cool and also super interesting and complex in the same time. So you mentioned you have a team of 5. Like, how does this work? For example, do you all have a different specialty within because we have way more departments than just 5? Or is it always a shared effort that you are really working closely together? Or how does this work in a small team?
I think we have quite some topics that are more like fundamentals of our team, where everyone works closely together on those. So if we have, for example, the persona-based model, architecture model, which is our architecture model at Ball, everyone will try to set the direction there, to collaborate together, to make the best decisions. But there are also specific topics. For example, Eleanor is our governance facilitator for the decision-making process. And we have lots of other initiatives that are spread around between us. On the very, let's say, technical side, we have initiatives that are called architecture modernization initiatives. So those usually cross multiple boundaries, different layers in our architecture, and then we are very deliberate about those. So those need to have a different process, different alignment, and then from our team we share those initiatives among us. So we are not responsible for a certain department, but we are responsible and allocated to different initiatives that are running in the landscape.
Yeah. Can you maybe give an example of such an architecture modernization initiative?
Yeah, of course. So I think there are several categories of those. Some of them are really related more to the functional architecture. For example, we had team autonomy. We really wanted to go very fast. We grew a lot in the last year. So sometimes we deliberately chosen to duplicate capabilities. Some of the modernization initiatives are a lot about reusability. So implementing more generic, reusable capabilities that support different propositions that we have. Yeah. For example, advertising, one of our business models, we went really fast with it, but we also need to look back right now, and not only look back from an architectural perspective, but also how can we support the future business strategy of advertising, which is more goal-based and bringing all propositions together. So that's one type of architecture modernization initiative. And then we also have quite some purely technical one, let's say, ones. You probably heard it in the previous podcast, the GraphQL migration that we are doing. That is also a modernization initiative, adopting GraphQL, but also changing our architecture so that we make the best out of it.
Mm-hmm. Cool. Wow.
Yep.
Is there, or you've been here just a few months in this role. Is there already some impact you guys have made or working on it?
So what do you mean with impact, right? So it's one of those business terms that can be a bit overloaded. Like, did we move like one metric from A to B? You know, this is always really hard. But what we do, what we do really aim for is to measure all our work. So. So this is really important for Bol as well. Like, we want to be data-driven as a company. So as enterprise architects, we also thought, hey, what if we make sure that we can measure the impact of our work? So we created a fitness functions. I don't know if you already did a podcast about fitness functions, but fitness functions, they are really about like measuring whether your architecture is fit. So they would, for example, measure, so we have this fitness function on encapsulation. It tells something how well encapsulated certain systems are, or a group of systems, or could be a whole team. And it sort of expresses whether or not logic of the domain that should be internally only could leak to the outside. And of course, if logic from one domain leaks outside of the domain boundary, it would mean that the coupling would be stronger between teams, or across, could even be across areas or across domains, which actually makes innovation harder. Yeah. So one of our, like Alexandra already said, one of our jobs is to make innovation easier. So we will measure this encapsulation score. It would just be a score between 0 and 100. A team can just see like how well am I currently encapsulating the logic of my domain, and it could say it's 80%. Well, it's really, really well done. Probably there's not many different ways that your domain is accessible from outside, and the APIs that you do have, they're really well defined. But actually, what we see is that a lot of teams are a lot lower than 80%. So we use these metrics to also over time see if it, our work of helping teams to guard their boundaries better, if that actually improves the encapsulation, but also we give these metrics to teams so they can say, hey, actually we have to improve here. Perhaps they didn't know that this was happening. So we try to use metrics and data as much as possible and have these accessible as dashboards, so teams can see how they can improve.
Yeah, that's really smart. And just a practical question, like how do you measure it? Because that seems like a huge skill where you have to measure all these things on enterprise level, right?
So we use a lot of our internal data for that. So we have lots of data from Istio, for example, that we can see how applications are connected to each other. We have lots of data about teams. We have lots of data from our GitLab repository. So we actually utilize all the data that we already have in our systems, and we transform it into these fitness functions.
Smart, yeah.
And to add with Anthony, because you asked about the impact that we already made, I think, of course, last year when we introduced this role, things were quite different, right? We already touched upon the autonomy. It was also quite different in the organization. I think, to be honest, change takes a lot of time. Yeah. I'm just very proud and happy that we managed to have the architecture decision making process in practice, and that people are following up on that, especially for level 1 decisions, so decisions that impact a big part of the enterprise. But also the fact that these architecture modernization initiatives are now planned and are now ongoing, It's not that, of course, time passes quickly. We have so many topics to work on, but we do have progress on those. Yeah. So these two topics really make me proud of what we already achieved as a team.
Definitely.
And measurable for that. Like we have an ADR repo, and one of the things we measure, very simple, is how many ADRs we have. And ADRs, I don't know if we already covered it, but they're really useful because they make sure that the decisions that teams made, that they are documented well. One of the problems we had in the past is that, a new person joins the team and they say, but why are we using technology X? This is really bad. I've seen it gone wrong.
Who came up with this idea?
We all have these examples, right?
Yeah.
So, and then having an ADR in place, which both covers the pros and the cons, and also the options that were not chosen. It helps to say, okay, but we decided together that we would go for option 1, accepting also the downsides of this option. And one of the things they're measuring is the amount of ADRs that are made. So we're pushing most of the decision down to the level of teams. It's really, like Alexandra covered, the level 1 decisions. Those are the pesky big ones that really require our attention, but we work together with technical leadership on that. But most of the decisions are actually made on a day-to-day basis by teams. And we encourage them to write them down in ADRs. And we see actually this number of ADRs, since we introduced the metric, we see that really rising a lot. Okay. And we hope that also means that teams make their decisions in a more mindful way, more deliberate, because they write down the pros and cons. And also that in the future, because we have written them down, we have less discussions.
Great. Especially that part.
Yeah, that's happy. So you also mentioned level 1 a few times. That implies that there are other levels. Can you maybe elaborate a little bit on?
Yeah, so level 1 is indeed a decision that impacts, that has a big impact in the enterprise most of the time. Sometimes we also promote level 2 ADRs to level 1 when it needs our attention. Level 2 are mostly within a domain. So people that are leading those domains are responsible for the decision-making process and for the decision itself, the content of the decision. And then level 3 ADRs are ADRs within a team, so no impact outside of the team. And I think the team has quite some freedom to organize that themselves and don't bring any overhead with this, but only document what is needed for them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really nice. I made one last week actually.
Well done.
To me, the new process was also new, but I think my manager said, yeah, you need to make an ADR for this one, so we made a level 2 for it.
Okay.
And it was nice because I started reading just the other ones that were made in my domain, which was indeed super interesting to just read, like, okay, why were they made? But I especially like the part of what is the risk we're taking here, of or what could another scenario be. So it was super nice for me to be introduced to the concept and to see.
Good to hear, really.
Yeah.
I'm happy customer.
Yeah, no, for real. For real. Yeah, it gives a lot of clarity.
Yeah.
Nice.
No, indeed, because I also was in teams where a lot of times you really don't know why the direction is chosen. Because it's been always that way, and that didn't make any sense. But this really
is one of those.
I'm really happy with these kind of things.
Nice.
So you guys also mentioned governance. So how do you approach the governance at this level?
So what we really mean with governance is most of all the decision-making process.
Right.
And that's, I think Alexandra mentioned as well that I'm the facilitator for that.
Yeah.
So on level 1, we have a real formal process. I had to personally get used to this a bit. I don't like processes that much. But sometimes they're really useful, especially if you do the same thing and you want to make it predictable. For example, you want to make the time it takes to make a decision more predictable. You want to make it predictable what's required before you can make a decision, and especially the really big ones, like making a huge investment in our measurement system or implementing GraphQL in the whole company. That kind of decisions, they come with a lot of risk or downsides. So sometimes they also require huge investments that need to be approved on board level. So therefore, we use this RAPID. So RAPID is a decision, or it's more like a responsibility framework that helps making decisions, and it makes sure that everybody that needs to be involved in a decision, they are having their own role. So for example, we have the EA governance board. So that's our team.
Yeah.
And they are in the role of decision maker, the D, as we call it, the decide. Yeah. And then our senior director, Ronald van Rijn, he is in the A of agree. So he can always, whenever we propose a decision, he can actually always say, I have a concern, and this concern needs to be addressed before we can move forward. And the recommender, so the person that drives the decision, they need to make sure that all the people that are in the input, in the perform, so the people that need to perform the decision when it's made, and in the agree role, they are taken along for the ride.
Yeah.
And by following this process, even though it is a bigger process and it requires a lot of input, it has very strict timelines. So the recommender actually gets the trust to recommend and get all the input there and make the decision. But in the end, it's signed off by all the people that are involved along the way. And we see that. So I was actually skeptical, but we tried it last year, and actually it works really well. Yeah. It works a lot better than not having a process. Like I have been involved in many really big architecture decisions over the years. When we didn't have enterprise architects, my role was lead architect, which wasn't really 100% clear what the scope was, but sometimes I had to make a really big decision. Mm-hmm. And then I was actually working for months with all the stakeholders, and then the stakeholders said, oh, I have another 5 people that you need to talk to. And before I knew it, I had like a list of 80 people that I needed to talk to, and they all could basically veto the decision.
Oh.
It really doesn't work like that. So in the rapid model, it's really clear. You can give input, you can raise concerns, and some people get to decide. And then if everything is done according to that process, we can make a level 1 decision in, I think, 2 weeks, 3 weeks. So, and then it's actually documented, it's clear, and we can move forward.
Yeah, I love that clarity. That really makes it easy to make decisions easier. So you mentioned that you talk a lot to technical leadership. Do you also talk to other leadership? Because you're, of course, an enterprise. Do you talk to the business as well? Or
Yeah, depending on the type of decision, of course. So sometimes we work closely with, for example, product directors or business directors. It just depends on the flavor of the decision that we are making. Because some of them are more related to, for example, new capabilities that we want to add to our landscape. And then you do touch upon strategy, and you do talk with leadership outside of tech, let's say. And some of them are more technical, and then it's our usual suspects, Ronald and the tech MT. Yep.
So you talked about persona-based architecture, right? So maybe you can tell a little bit more about that, and how do you let the rest of us know what it is?
Okay, yeah. So indeed, we have this, what we call the persona-based architecture model at Bol. Our landscape is actually structured into a layered architecture, starting from journeys, catering for example consumer and for partners, and then moving more towards core capabilities, which is serving multiple journeys, and the foundation of our landscape, which is more the technical tooling, so our technical platform, but also topics like security, data, that's part of our foundation at Bol. So we adopted this model end of last year, I think. It is helping us a lot to achieve the efficiency that we want to achieve. So when you talk about a core capability in the landscape, you immediately think about, you should immediately think about the good APIs, serving the rest of the journeys, how to make this reusable, how to make it adaptable for the new business models. So it really helps us giving focus to every team in the landscape, I think. And our teams are also organized according to this model. So we have this inverse Conway maneuver. So far it's really helping us making this kind of decisions. I think back to the question, how do we make it as public as possible, as easy to find as possible? Our idea was to generate a podcast about it. I think it's now 10, 12 minutes podcast using Notebook LM. So we put in a lot of sources, a lot of docs written by us, and we got this really awesome podcast, to be honest. So at first I was really surprised by the quality of it. I think it's like 90% good enough. So I will ask you guys to also upload it with this podcast and spare us for 10 minutes of talking about this model. No, you can really have some fun watching it. I think it's really a good quality.
Yeah, it's super cool though.
Cool, I'm interested to listen to it. I guess this is one of the ways, because you're a small team, how to scale, to automate some stuff.
Yeah, we need, like Eleanor used to say, we need our 6th team member, which was Eleanor or something.
Or Giles.
Something around AI, really.
We really think that AI can help us a lot to scale as a team, because we're, deliberately, the technical leadership has made our team really small. They didn't want to have like a big group of architects, because they really believe in what Alexandra mentioned earlier, that everybody should be an architect, right? So the engineers that make the decisions on a day-to-day basis, the engineering managers, the heads of engineering, they all make architecture decisions on a certain level, and we should empower them to do so. So our team is deliberately kept quite small. But we see that AI and the way these models, obviously everybody talks about it, so we shouldn't talk too long about it, perhaps, to not make it an AI podcast. But yeah, we think that we can do a lot with it and have our 6th team member be an automated team member. For example, think about like all these complicated topics that we have, like governance or the rapid model or the persona-based architecture model, or our what we didn't cover yet, our directives, which are like the principles and practices that should guide everyday decision making. How can we explain these concepts in an easier way? Not only by creating a podcast, for example, but also by making it possible for everyone to just ask questions, not that I will answer them, but we have a model trained on our knowledge base that can answer questions real time. So,
cool.
you know, that kind of thing would be so cool. One of the other things that traditionally was done by hand by enterprise architects is, for example, discovering business capabilities and making a map of business capabilities of the whole landscape. And what a business capability map actually does is it will explain what the company can do, but also who, you know, which teams owns what part of the functionality.
Yeah.
It is really useful for leadership to know what we have and not to duplicate things. This kind of thing is usually super labor intensive to make and also to maintain. But now, with AI, we can basically just... So we feed the AI our code. And then it says, well, this code offers this functionality. Oh, can you please write this into a business capability map? Sure, Eleanor. Why not? Great question.
Favorite colleague.
Yeah, so, you know, obviously, all fun aside, we have to be really strict and look at the output of these models. They're not 100% correct. But the quality, you know, what comes out of it, it automates away 80% of the manual labor. Obviously, we have to do a lot of after processing before it's useful. But we think that using AI as this team, it could really help us to automate some of these laborious manual processes and to explain a lot of the stuff that we do.
That's cool also to have some sort of, I don't want to call it a coach, but even like an assistant that just helps you of like, where did we have a blind spot somewhere? Where did we maybe miss a gap that it will, well, because is it only fed with our internal like documentation or also external thoughts on the full architectural perspectives?
It depends on the tool. Like the notebook LM, what I really like about this one is it keeps to the source material. So it doesn't really get other stuff with it. You only feed it what we have created, and then it will only talk about that. But we also use other models, and they, of course, also have outside, they're trained on outside sources.
Yeah, super cool.
So do you also, because you use AI a lot yourselves, do you also have a vision, enterprise architecture vision about AI for the company?
Yeah, I'm actually working on that at this moment. I think it's one of the pillars in our vision that we are currently creating. But of course, outside of our group, there is also a discipline that is in the working group that is busy with this particular topic. So we will link it to our vision in a sense that what does it mean to be AI ready, basically, especially when you look at the boundaries between different capabilities, because that's one of our focus points, you know, to build really strong boundaries and context for teams to thrive in. But there is way more than this at company level that is happening at the moment.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
So you mentioned directives. Can you elaborate a little bit more about the directives you guys use?
So before we had this function, we already had architecture principles, but they were perhaps not very focused. While we also found that on the team level, people already use some sort of guidelines to guide their decisions, but they were never really formalized. So what we did, the first thing that we did when we started this team, basically, I think it was like the first 2 weeks, we thought, like, what are these sort of unspoken agreements that we all think that are important, that we should formalize and write down in a way that teams know, oh yes, indeed, this is very important. it is important to have strong encapsulation. You know, it's important to look at coupling strength if we create connections between our staff and their staff. It's important to, before we even start building, think about the design of our API. And these things, they sound like open doors. And we also, you know, the first set is a little bit of an open door kind of set. But because they were never formalized, it still led to quite a lot of discussions. Shall we do it now? And, you know, what actually does it mean to have a strong encapsulated boundary? What does it mean to have less coupling or high coupling? So we made these things more explicit and we wrote them down in 8 directives. And we called it directives because they're sort of a mix between principles and practices. So practices help teams to understand, like, how should I act? And while principles are more, how should I do it? So we created this list of 8 directives, and now actually in the next half year, we're rolling them out. So they're not already public. People can see them. But the next half year, we also put some measurements in place.
Nice.
And we're really going to hopefully see that teams will adopt them and that they will help teams to create this strong context, these strong boundaries for themselves. So they can actually do innovation faster or have less disturbances, have less questions asked of them.
Yeah.
And I think what we did differently this time compared to the architecture practices was also that we published this set, which is very coherent all together. You know, in the past, everyone would had an idea of what a good principle is, and they would just submit, and it would be also very optional. But right now, we really try to change our architecture process. So. Our architecture at Bol is actually composed of 1,300, I think, by now, microservices. Of course, you can also say, is this a real architecture or is it more a deployment strategy? But actually, with this set of directives, we want to move from a microservice architecture to a domain-oriented microservice architecture. So creating this context, this bounded context, because we are using domain-driven design as a methodology. And then once we successfully reasoned about the bounded context, we can implement boundaries for those bounded context and somehow disallow all other connections to those tiny microservices that build or that make a bounded context. So hopefully with this set of directives, it will be really our first step to untangle the microservices dependencies and to be more deliberate about the boundaries, because like I always say, only good fences make great neighbors, you know, so that's why it's almost like my obsession. The less the better boundaries we have, the less easy the implementation, the conversations are. And I'm not just saying this from my feeling or something. This is the data that we get. So in big architecture modernization initiatives, sometimes the lead time shows that we spend 3 weeks on debating where should something live, let's say, who should implement it, and then 2 days to actually implement it. So we really hope that this will reduce the unnecessary noise around it.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, it's really smart and also really interesting to see indeed how it changed over the years. And I'm also really curious, because you are quite a small team, how do you make sure within the team that you're still up to date with what the industry is doing? Because you might make a decision that has to be still up to date with the market in 3 years, let's say. How do you guys make sure that indeed you are still, do you have like eyes open to other enterprise skill architects or companies or?
That's a really good question. Should I give an honest answer?
You always be honest.
Not that the rest wasn't honest until now, but we are so busy on forming the new team and understanding the problem that we need to fix at Bol, that sometimes it allows us very little to get, huge inspiration. And from my part, is also about accepting that every company is different. It's not that I'm stubborn, I don't want to learn from the outside, but I'm also the type of person that wants to really understand the problems that we are facing, get as much data as possible to validate those ideas, and then find relevant solutions, also checking the outside market.
Yeah.
So I think it's a good question, and we are still figuring out how to balance, what's happening outside of the industry, outside of our platform, and what's happening within our company.
Yeah.
And to add to that, I read a lot.
Yeah.
I really like to read up on all the latest trends and stuff. So if there's a good book and I see it recommended on LinkedIn by some of the gurus that we really like, the writers of software architecture, the hard parts, of team topologies or something, obviously you can see what's going on, and we dive into the theory. But one of the things that I've noticed over the years of doing architecture on a really large scale, like Paul, is that often the theory is very hard to translate to practice.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it's good to be inspired by the outside world and to know what's going on, but also, not to be swept away by that.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because the reality of what you're dealing with and the complexity when you really know a company, it's so different from what you read in these books. They oversimplify things often, which, it doesn't mean that there's no truth in them, but that, the devil is usually also in the details.
Yeah, but it's also a huge skill that you're able to really see it from like a high perspective, be really pragmatic, because sometimes the decision might be better to be way more pragmatic instead of just making a decision. Would you say like these are the competencies that are also really applicable within your roles, or are there do you have some competencies that you would say these are definitely the ones that we are looking for in enterprise architecture?
Yeah, there are quite a few competencies that I think are needed to make it a success. And of course, for me, being pragmatic is one of them. So understanding very well where everyone stands, but still being able to zoom out and think of ways to actually be able to move towards a resolution of a problem. So that's definitely one of the things. Of course, you need to be influential.
Mm-hmm.
You need to, by listening, in my opinion, and to be able to take worries away, to simplify problems so that you can move with it.
Mm-hmm.
If you keep complexity as a badge of honor or something, it will never work out, because you just add more nuances to an already complex problem. So, yeah, what is important for you, Eleanor?
Yeah, so I think it's a good mix between functional and technical skills as well. So obviously with 5 people, we can't all be super hands-on in the technology, but to know how the development process works, have like a base knowledge of software architecture, and be curious about how teams are developing, what kind of complexities they do encounter, and at least understand them from a certain level is really important. And the functional level as well, like understand how things are actually working, how is the process working, be curious, go to the business people and say, but what's really happening in your process? And to connect both sides of this, like it's both the functional, both the technical, and then also you said influence, Alexandra, but I would say like politics. Like
politics.
Politics, yes.
Politics,
like
yeah.
we always say at Bol that we don't do politics, but it's actually not true. Every organization where there's more than, 2 people has politics.
Yeah.
It's just part of humanity, to have subconscious stream of how, how things work. And it's important in our role to understand, how is the hierarchy flowing, what's important to people, and to take the worries away. It's not only important to know your stuff, but also to know the people and the organization, and to connect these things together to generate what I call trust.
Yeah.
So to generate trust, it's not only about having the best idea or having, or knowing it all.
Mm.
It's also about knowing the organization and making sure that people see that over time you have constantly delivered.
Yeah.
So it's also about experience, I would say, for enterprise architecture. And being a little bit more, I would say, relaxed, and not constantly being like, oh, this is really the biggest problem I've ever seen. You know?
And this, and this.
Yeah, and being swayed by drama. So it's more like you're looking at things from a distance, like, oh yeah, yes, indeed, it's hard, but there's always a solution, and making sure that people come out of this drama or the moment and look at the wider picture, understand it, and are ready to move forward.
Yeah.
So sometimes also about untangling the human knots.
Yes.
Definitely.
Undocumented requirement for this this job.
Yeah, so it's hard to put these things in a job requirement, obviously. So I think most people that have about 10, 15 years of experience in these kind of roles, they generate this experience over time, and they have it like in their tool set or in their backpack.
Yeah.
It's hard to sort of formalize that into a competency.
Yeah.
And of course, both of you also have a lot of years of experience here. So I think it also helps that you have like a really, really big network already. You know where to, get people together if it's required. So it's also super nice. Yeah. Thanks a lot, though. Honestly, I've learned a lot today.
Yeah.
It's really interesting topic, and it's really cool to hear how you guys are able to clear this big picture with just 5 people. I think that's really inspiring.
Yeah, thanks a lot. And don't forget, we also rely on you guys to make this clear picture.
Everyone is an architecture, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I love that.
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, super nice. So thanks for being here. We will definitely link the podcast of the persona-based model in the show notes.
Yeah.
And
please come back sometime, because I heard some topics where I think, these could be whole podcasts of their own, right?
Yeah.
Like,
nice. We will for sure. Right?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Cool. Awesome. Well, great having you, and until next time.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
till next
Till
time.
It was
next
a
time.
pleasure.
Bye bye.